guys, it's Glenn from glenscarcollection.com, and this is the first ride of the season with my 2017 Porsche 911 Carrera. So this is just a base model. Rear-wheel drive with a 7-speed manual, but it's got all the right options. Manual sport seats, sport exhausts. Now, if you notice, there's no sport chrono here, so I actually have to rev match myself. So sport chrono gives you rev matching on the manuals, and on the PDKs, it gives you, the sun's in my eyes, it gives you, it gives you launch control. So I like the purity of this car, rear drive, manual transmission, and I have to rev match myself. We're about to hit 5,000 miles on this drive since my ownership, since I bought it last May. Probably have a little more miles by the time you see this video. So I'm going to do a comprehensive 5,000 mile review of this car, what I like, what I don't like, the features, but I'll save that for a more comprehensive review than driving this. Wow. Kicking up all the salt here. So the problem is with driving in the early spring is you got all the rocks on the road. And what I love best about this car is obviously the handling, the rear drive, and the turbos. I like this way better than the 991.1. Always get the .2 cars. My 993 turbo essentially was the end of the 993, so essentially a .2, even though it wasn't official. My 996 4S was a .2 of the 996s, and this car, the first year of the turbos in 2017, is a .2 officially of the 991 series. Good thing I have PPF on my car because I'm getting pelted with dirt and rocks here. 7-speed manual. I never actually used 7th gear. I had a half-hour highway ride to get to this road, and 7th gear to me, I usually drive in 5th and 6th on the highway. 5th or 6th if I really want decent mileage. This will get you decent mileage. Not as good as my M340iX drive, but 1,000 times better than my 993 turbo, which got about 10 miles to the gallon once you were in the turbos. And much better than my, of course, E90 M3. Downshift, and that's me downshifting. But this is a real joy to drive. The M340iX drive did great this winter. Limited by all-season tires. It's certainly a size bigger than this car, and it's a lot heavier. This car is only 3,150 pounds if you have the manual transmission in the rear drive. So that's what I really liked about it. Next to like the GT3, this is the lightest 991.2 cars. Even though I live in the Northeast where the weather is terrible 50% of the time, you really don't need all-wheel drive. I'd be fine. I don't want to drive this car in the winter with the salt, so I put like 0 miles on it this winter, a couple times around the block just to keep the engine going. I don't drive it when there's salt. But this could easily be, you could easily, with snow tires on, with the weight in the back, you could easily make this a 4 Seasons car for sure. I just choose not to because I don't want to ruin this beautiful Miami blue paint. But the turbos make such a difference. So the 991.1, the reason I chose this over that, and even though they're much cheaper, if you want a PDK, you can get an early 991.1 at 2012, 2013 model for like $55, I've seen, which is a steal for a fast 911 because it has the PDK. But I don't like the electronic steering. That's their first foray into electronic steering, so it's terrible, and I don't like the look. I think the 992, they really made the look a lot better. I don't like those tail lights on the 991.1s. But the power of the turbos is pretty amazing, because the turbos have, since the my 993 turbo, the turbos have always been all-wheel drive, and it is such a joy to have a rear drive turbo. It's just the rear end is just way more lively, and there's a learning curve, you know, coming from a Cayman S going to a 911, because you don't have that front end grip. Not that the Cayman has a ton of it because it's mid-engine, but you really need to master that rear end grip, and that's where all the fun is in the 911, in that rear end grip. And you have so much power. Now this F80 M3 in front of us is really fast, that's for sure. Now this car even gained my friend's 997.2 GT3 RS, which is probably one of my favorite cars in the whole world. This is just as fast, maybe faster in a straight line. I think one of the reasons is Porsche only claims 370 horsepower, but a lot of magazines have thrown this car on the dyno, and it makes 390 to the wheels. So that means in reality, it's really putting out over 400 horsepower, and that explains it. If you told me this car had over 400 horsepower, I'd say yeah, because that's why it's so fast. Now, if you get the S or the GTS, they're even faster. And I could certainly tune my car to make even 500 horsepower. The only downside to it is the S's and the GTS, they have bigger turbos, so they have more turbo lag, which is a downside, but the upside is they have the cooling. So if I upgraded my car, I wouldn't have the cooling. And unfortunately, I learned that I was going to do the tune first before the PPF, and at some point I think I will do the tune. The downside for my car with the manual transmission is you don't get the 500 foot-pounds of torque. If you have the PDK car, no problem. You can get like roughly 500 horsepower from an ECU tune, 500 foot-pounds of torque. For me, I could get the horsepower, but they toned down the torque, which to me is part of the fun since it has the turbos. All right, so stay tuned for a very comprehensive 5,000-mile review. These roads are so bumpy. Get a flat tire easily here. All right, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.